Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this Tuesday for this edition of Sisters of Legacy. We're going to run our intro and we'll be right back. All right, and we are back. Tonight we have some special guests with us that's going to get us all the way together and inform us on the things that we think we know. So we're going to welcome Maya Miles and India Young. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so I know we went over this a little bit, but we're gonna do it again since we're live now. So India, give us your full name and tell us your title and exactly what you do.
Okay, so I'm India Young, and I'm a LPC, which is a licensed professional counselor here in Georgia. I have a private practice, and I work primarily with adults, specifically women who deal with pregnancy, infant loss, infertility, postpartum depression. But I've worked with children and adolescents, and just general mental health concerns for the last 11 years, I think. Yeah, I think it's been about 11 years at this point.
Okay. And Maya.
Hey, I think that was my cue. So I am Maya Miles. Yes, you want me to keep going, Samantha? Okay, I'm Maya Miles, and I now I actually have my own business where I am a mental health consultant. So I consult with different private practices, helping them get their agency started and their company started as far as billing and doing things. But previously, before that, I did work in the community with India. She was actually the therapist on the team, and I was a paraprofessional. And so we went into individual homes, and we worked with them with depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, different mental health disorders. India focused more on the counseling and therapy, and I focused more on the skill building, self-care, and everyday living skills.
Okay. There is that wonderful echo. All right, so we're going to power through tonight and not let it slow us down too much. Ladies, good night, good evening, Lisa. Thanks for joining us, and good evening to you as well, Stefani, I guess. And Anthony, you are in the wrong place.
Hey, Maya in the building. Hey, Anthony. Sorry.
Okay, so I guess we'll start with like the most prevalent things that are going on, I guess, kind of right now. So, India, have you found that maybe cases have increased during the pandemic? And tell us why you think that is.
100% increase during the pandemic, and I believe it's more so because a lot of people don't think, or when we think about mental health, we push through it, right? So if I'm dealing with depression, if I'm dealing with anxiety, but pre-pandemic, I went to work, I picked up the kids, I went to soccer games, I went to baseball games, I just kept going. This pandemic set us all down, right? So those coping skills that we had we no longer have that outlet, or at least we didn't. I mean, I guess we're coming out of it at this point, but in the thick of the pandemic, we couldn't leave the house. We couldn't have those soccer games. We couldn't have those drinks with our friends. We couldn't do all those things. So now I was forced to kind of deal with the things that I was pushing through pre-pandemic. And so now with people learning more and the stigma surrounding mental health is kind of being lifted, people are reaching out more and understanding that, you know, you don't always have to come to a therapist just because, you know, I can't get out of bed. Sometimes I just need somebody to talk to. Sometimes I need somebody to just vent to. Today was hard and I can't push through it. So I just think that it opened that door, that window of opportunity for therapists. But yeah, definitely 100% increase during this pandemic.
Okay, and so now during the pandemic, you were active as well. So, like, what was some of your advisory tips to people during that time?
Absolutely. So the main thing was self-care. So because the pandemic did shut everything down and have everybody in the home, you didn't do a lot of the things that you typically do for yourself. And so definitely doing that self-care thing, which doesn't have to be get your hair done, get your nails done. It can be, you know, how am I going to change my eating habits? Or how am I going to exercise? Am I sleeping well? So making sure that you focus on those. And one thing I work with a lot of the participants that I worked with the previous company was a gratitude jar. And so a lot of times we don't necessarily think about the things that we can be grateful for because we're so busy, like, oh, the kids in virtual school. Oh, I got to do this. I got to cook. And it becomes a routine. So doing that gratitude jar to, hey, pull out those things when you're getting in that mood where you're not feeling well and just say, hey, what are some things I'm grateful for? So really focusing on living in the present, being in the here and now, and really, you know, focusing on that, what you're grateful for.
Samantha, we can't hear you.
Yes, of course, because I'm struggling with my sound. Okay, I'm gonna take a deep breath. So,
that's it there. That's what we do. Take a deep breath. Bring it back down. That's right. You did it.
Listen, I'm so trying not to, you know, have a meltdown, especially on live. So, India, you were saying right now you deal more with pregnant women and postpartum and that type of thing. So I actually previously, you know, like, were there signs for women that could be more susceptible? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, so definitely. With postpartum depression and anxiety, I always like to add the anxiety because we often leave anxiety off of postpartum depression. Like, that's what we hear about. So if you were dealing with depression or anxiety pre-pregnancy, pre-baby, you have a higher chance of having it once you have the baby. And then the other risk factors that are there, you know, support system, who's here with me if dad is there, or, you know, dad has to go back to work. A lot of times moms are off for the 6 to 8 weeks, but dad may get a week or if that, you know, and so then it's just you and baby and trying to adjust to it. So those are the risk factors. And then if you add the pandemic, which shut off people being involved in the prenatal care, like people having to go to prenatal appointments alone. Some women that I've worked with during this pandemic couldn't even see their doctors face to face. Like, if you weren't considered high risk, you did virtual appointments. Where if this is my first pregnancy and I got a lot of questions, specifically women of color, like, we struggle in that area because they don't listen to us. And so it just increased it because I don't have anybody to talk to. My doctor is, you know, on a computer screen. They're not looking at me. They're not touching me. Like, I'm just in this alone. So once I have the baby, I still feel alone because I think now they're allowing dads to be in the delivery room, but in the thick of the pandemic, no, it was mom, doctors, nurses, midwives, and things like that. So it just increased. It was a greater risk factor for them to experience it once they got home. And outside of that first 7-day window, because baby blues, I know you guys probably heard that before, but that's usually about 7 to 10 days after the baby. If you're still dealing with, you know, I can't get out of bed, I can't function, I can't move on, it's a little bit more than baby blues at that point. So, yeah.
Okay. And so, Maya, in some of those situations, what was, like in your role dealing with those types of things, what were some of your suggestions?
For anxiety, or you just say in any situation?
Well, let's start with anxiety.
Anxiety. Okay. So definitely what what we just talked about. Hey, doing that deep breathing. So in the midst of that, taking a moment, stepping back. And so what I call it is taking a pause, take a step back, because sometimes we tend to go because we're in the moment and we're frustrated. So it's like, no, if you're feeling that anxiety, or you feel whatever your emotions are, or whatever your bodily experience is. So if your hands start sweating, if your heart start racing, once you feel that, pause, take a step back, do some deep breathing. One of the things, counting to 10 in your head, inhaling, exhaling, taking those deep breaths. Another thing that I talk about too is guided imagery. And so when you're in that moment and you really want to do something to relax and calm down, closing your eyes and going to your happy place. So if it's the beach, imagining yourself in the beach, smelling the sand, or feeling the sand, the heat on your body, whatever that is that takes you to your happy place, really going there. And when you do it, really do it. Sometimes we just say, okay, I'm just gonna breathe. But it's like, no, focus on it and be intentional about your breathing. Be intentional about going to your happy place. And so that really helps bringing that anxiety down. Definitely taking that pause, doing that counting, and doing that, the guided imagery is really helpful in those moments. And then for another thing, like India said, after a while, not even just for postpartum, but any type of depression, once you find yourself staying in that one place for a certain amount of time, that's not normal, definitely saying, hey, what do I need to do to get up? So even if it's just taking baby steps to say, okay, today I'm going to get up and wash my face. Today I'm going to get up and do this. So setting those small, realistic goals, which are really important. Sometimes we'll put goals really high, like, okay, today I'm going to go grocery shopping, do the laundry, clean up the house and do all of this. And then when we don't do it, we become frustrated. So then if we're already feeling depressed, it puts us back into the depressed mode. Like, okay, I can't do it. So no, hey, doing those small things. Today, I'm going to wash the clothes and dry them. I didn't say I was going to fold them. Tomorrow I'll fold them, So making sure we give ourselves those realistic goals, I would say is very, very important. And then another thing I used to tell people is define your terms. And so a lot of times we'll say stuff like, hey, I'm lazy, or hey, I'm stupid, or hey, what does that term mean to you? So define that term to yourself, because a lot of times we ourselves take that definition based on what somebody else says. So somebody else is like, oh, they're lazy because of X, Y, and Z. Just because I don't fold my clothes right after I wash them don't make me lazy. That just means that I'm gonna accomplish it tomorrow, So definitely defining those terms that we put on ourselves, because we do a lot of self-judging, which also can lead to a lot of that depression and anxiety as well.
Child, if folding the clothes the day after determines things, we might as well go on and put me in whatever category in body. I'll wash them and dry them, but I don't know if they're getting folded and hung up. Like, I'm okay if it's not the basket.
And you would be surprised how many participants or clients I've talked to who's like, I'm just so frustrated because I don't get to fold them. I'm like, it may be a week for me, but I know they clean. So I go tell them kids, go get that stuff out of that laundry basket.
Right. I learned to let it go a long time ago. Like, I'm okay with it. You okay with it? All right, let's live our life. The clothes are clean.
That's right. That's right. And that's important.
Would you guys say, I want to talk about two communities, the Black community and the church community. Mm-hmm. So within the Black community and within the church community, I think that there has always been a stigma with regard to therapy and with regard to seeking therapy. Do you guys find that it's hard for us, Black people, and for church people to seek out counseling, to seek out therapy, to seek out help?
Definitely. I will say being in the pandemic, our community has been a little more open to it. Like the reality of it has kind of set in, but it's still a little bit of a stigma. I'm not gonna tell you everything, or I'm not gonna give you everything. I'm not gonna expose everything, because we're all African American here. Like, we know, like, you don't talk about your stuff. Like, you pray about it and you leave it there. Mm-hmm. Period. And so it's the stigma behind it. But I feel like at this point, we have realized like a new, like, I don't know what this generation is called, but like the younger people, like our age and a little younger, we're kind of starting to realize, okay, I can't do this by myself. I can pray, and that's what I should do. But I also may need to talk to somebody. Again, like I always tell my clients, like, sometimes you just need to vent. Like, therapy doesn't have to be structured. And I think sometimes that's what we think in our head, like, oh, she's going to ask me this. And sometimes I just need to vent. And sometimes when I log in, because I'm still virtual with my clients, I'm like, okay, so I start, how's today? How are you doing? How was your week? And they go, and it'd be 45 minutes. And I'm like, okay, how do you feel now? And you'll be surprised at how much weight that's lifted. And I think we're starting to see it now. A lot more than we did before, but definitely. And I think it kind of goes hand in hand, the Black community and the church community, because you pray about it, like you take it to the altar and you leave it there. Like, you don't talk about yourself. You just don't. Like, at least that's how I grew up. And I'm a whole therapist at this point. Like, it's hard. Like, I remember talking with my grandmother, rest her soul. She was so proud of me for, going on to school and becoming a therapist. But when I was like, Grandma, maybe you should talk to a therapist, when she started to get she was like, oh, no, I talked to Jesus. I'm like, but I'm a whole therapist, right? Like, you're proud of me, but you're not willing to do it. But that's, that's just the how we were reared. That's how we were taught. You pray about it, you leave it there. But I think we're turning the corner. Like, we're making the turn. We're still turning. So yeah.
Yeah, and to piggyback on India, I think now the church seems to be a lot more receptive too. From back growing up with us, it was more like, okay, you go to the deacons, we're gonna get this oil, we about to pray, because whatever it is, the demon, whatever it was, we're gonna pray it out of you. But now you see a lot of churches saying, hey, we do counseling, we do grief share, we do this. So, try to bridge that gap in. And I think that's probably part of the reason as well as why I think it's more receptive in the church now. But yeah, I think with a lot of our community, it's crazy. When you think of mental health, you think crazy. You think of when you going downtown Atlanta and somebody yelling in your car, like, that's the first thing you think about. And when I tell people, I'm like, no, it's the total opposite of what you think it is. It's literally the total opposite. And so I think getting it out, all of the commercials, now you see all of the, different famous people coming out like, yes, I use this app, or yes, I use this app. And I think that is also helping bridge that gap as well.
Right. So do you think that the stigma comes from just kind of what like, I read this meme that said you can have Jesus and a therapist too. And I'm like, like, that makes a whole lot of sense. But when you talk to kind of our older people, you do kind of hear them say, kind of like India, what your grandmother said is that, I don't need, I'm not going to do that. I don't need to go to therapy. I can remember having a conversation with some older people in my family. They're like, the crazy people go to therapy. We don't need that. It's like, but no, you do need to talk to somebody though. Like, it will be really healthy if you have a conversation with somebody other than us, because like when it comes out with us, it's not good. So you might need to talk to somebody else about it. Do you think that stigma comes from just, I guess, because we've been brought up in churches and like our kind of background is like we've been taught to have faith and not to depend on anything or anybody else? Or do you think it's something deeper or something bigger than that? Like, is it something that, and I'm going to say this, I don't know who our audience is, but forgive me if I offend you before I say it. I feel like some people think, white people do that. We don't do that. So do you think it's like more so on that end where like we don't do that, like it's certain things that we just don't do, and that's one of them? Or is it more so because of the faith aspect of it?
I think it's a combination of the two. I think that when you're dealing with religion in African American community, no matter what the religion is, like we are very strong in like faith. Like, I believe that God is gonna deliver me. Like, God is gonna, it's already written. Whatever's gonna happen to me is gonna happen to me, no matter the religion. In a Black community, period. And so I think it's just a combination of the two. And then when you're thinking about the older population, is back in the day with mental health, it was the crazy people,
Yes,
right?
yes.
It was the ones that's downtown under the bridge that you talked about. Like when you see old movies that even depicts mental health, you got them in the straight jackets, you got them in the white coats. Like you don't have it where it's like people that look like you and me actually sitting down talking to a therapist. So when you think about that population, that the older population of people, no, I don't need to go there because that's not me. Like I can manage. So it just get harder to try to get them to kind of rethink their thought process or redo their thought process. But yeah, it's just a combination of the two. So I think now it's becoming a little more acceptable in the older population, but that's because they're seeing it more. Like Maya mentioned, the commercials and things, like we're everywhere you go at this point. And I don't know if the pandemic definitely put a bad taste in my mouth. Like it was a struggle for me, but I think there's some good that's also coming out of it because people are able to see the benefits of therapy. And I don't think we would have if we had kept being as busy as we were, kept going. Because when you think about it, if I struggled with something and I dealt with it and I didn't have a breakdown, then I don't need a therapist because I survived. Like I don't need to talk to anybody because I survived. But the pandemic set us down. It's like, I'm not really surviving no more. Like I'm spazzing out here. My deep breathing isn't working. So I need somebody to kind of teach me something else that I can do, somebody to remind me to be intentional with my breathing. I remember when this pandemic first started, I would be so caught up in like the news and watching all of the numbers and, this many people got it, this many people dying. And I would sit there and I know I'm breathing heavy. And I would call my husband and I'd be like, I got shortness of breath. I think I got it. I got the corona. Like literally that's the way my brain was functioning. And then when I was intentional about my breathing, it was like, nope, you was just anxious. You're fine. You're okay. So I think like now it's giving us this opportunity to, again, that opening the door, bridging the gap. Like it is okay to talk to it. It's okay to talk about mental health. It's okay to protect your peace. It's okay to want to calm yourself down. It's okay to take that deep breath when things start getting out of whack. It's okay to do those things. And it's okay to reach out. It's okay. Like,
Okay, so I have a question. I hear a lot that, men just don't talk. Like men don't talk, but women, y'all talk, y'all get together, y'all talk. Do you find that to be true, or is that just what people say?
Well, in my experience, it's very interesting. Couple men on my caseload, they talk way more than the women. Sometimes I'm like, oh, you got a lot on your mind today, huh? Like you got a lot going on. It's just the facade that they put on. So they may not, like for women, we're gonna go to our girls, like we're gonna call our best friend, we're gonna call our sister, we're gonna talk about, we're not gonna, some of us sometimes, like we're not going to keep it in. With men, they'll hold it in. But the guys on my caseload, and you would be surprised, like when they reach out, I'm shocked because of what is out there, like what we think and what we hear about men and not wanting to talk, not wanting to see a therapist. And so when I'm getting a new client, it's like, I'm like, wow, okay, so you want to talk about what's going on. So I think it's just the facade that's going on, and they keep it in from the people that they love, right? Like, so your husband may not talk to you, but if he gets a therapist, he's going to be an open book, because most times once you get past the stigma behind therapy, once you get to the point where you've made the decision and you recognize that this is a safe place for me,
Right.
I can just let it out, because ethically, I can't say nothing to nobody. So whatever you tell me is going to stay right here in this room. So, and that's with me, and that's overall too. Like most people who were like withholding things and not really wanting to talk, once they realize like the legal ramifications, or they're an open book. And I'm like, whoa, like you have a lot. Like, let's go, let's get it, let's talk about it. So yeah.
And then, so I think like you said, the feeling comfortable, but also the open-ended questions too, I think get the men to talk a lot too. So it's not more of, for me, if I'm talking to my husband, it's like, no, I'm getting my point across and that's it. But, when I'm in front of a client, it's totally different. It's like, hey, well, let me, what do you mean by that? Explain that to me. So then it allows them that room to, hey, do that, which is really good for the effective communication when we talk about that as well. Like, hey, how are you communicating effectively with, anyone? So yeah, those open-ended questions are huge too.
Okay, that was part of my next question. I was going to ask you, Maya, do you find that you give different coping advice, male versus female, or is it generally like a person by person basis?
Yep, person by person. So each one of them, because I can get a female that is that like I had one when we first started talking. She was like, "Listen, I really don't even want to talk to you." I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, great. So let's talk about what do you want to do? Like, hey, we got this whole hour. What we gonna do? So yeah, it's definitely person by person and building that rapport. And once you build that rapport, hey, letting it flow.
Okay, so on top of the pandemic, we've also experienced a lot of racial things happening, from the president to law enforcement. We've seen different videos of just random people of other races online. Do you think those things have a mental effect or can affect your mental? Especially like we know the story of slavery, and we know the story of what they endured during the Martin Luther King era. We know, like we've heard them, but now to actually be living in that time, do you think that could have an effect on your mental wellness?
Absolutely. I'll start with you. Absolutely. And one thing I always stress is if you're seeing something like India was saying when COVID first started, of course, the George Floyd trial, I think everybody was like, okay, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? So definitely being in that, having your feelings in it, but making sure that if you see that it is affecting your mental health or your stress level, changing what you're focusing on in the situation. So we always, have these situations and we're going to focus on it. But if you see that it's starting to, affect you in any way, change how you're focused, change what you're focusing on, change what you think about the situation, because that will really help through it. So like for the pandemic, what I would tell a lot of the clients that I was working with, what are you paying attention to? Oh, I'm watching how many people have passed away. I'm watching this. I'm watching this. I'm like, okay. And then I had another one who she just wanted to let me know she was a Republican. I don't know if she could tell that I was African American or what. She was like, I'm a Republican and everything Trump says is true. And I'm like, okay, great. Well, I appreciate that, So just really having that to say, hey, what's the problem? And then, of course, when Joe Biden was elected, she was really offended. And she really was like, this doesn't make any sense. And so her anxiety just went through the roof. So I'm like, hey, let's stop. Let's take a pause. Why is it bothering you so much? So really trying to find out the root of that. Why is this bothering you that something's happening? Or of course we know with the everything that's going on, we know why those things are bothering us, but saying, hey, if how we're responding to it is going to affect our mental health, is there something we can do differently? Is it something we need to change? How do we need to pay attention to these situations? Because they're very important. We need to advocate. We need to advocate and, of course, do everything we can do in these situations, but make sure that it ultimately doesn't affect our mental health as well.
Right.
So, India, what would you say? What would you say about that as well?
It's basically the same thing, but one thing I will also tell my clients with the pandemic and the racial uproar was to sometimes you have to change what you're intaking, like how much TV you're watching, how much news you're watching. It's okay. We should be informed. We need to know these things so that we can stay safe, especially as African Americans. You want to make sure that we know what's going on so that when we venture out in these streets that we're able to keep ourselves protected. But when it becomes debilitating to when I can't function, then I don't need to watch it. I need to be mindful of how much I'm intaking, because it's only so much I can do. And I'm big on like operating within your circle of control. Like I can't control what is going on around, like Maya's client who is like, I can't control that she was assigned to me. Like I can't control that she felt the need to say that to me. I can control how I respond and how much I take, how much I allow her to, influence my thoughts, but I have to know like my cutoff. And I tell people that all the time, like knowing when it's too much. And I even have to remind myself, I'm a whole human. Like, India, that's enough. That's enough. Like I can't. And I have, especially when you think about race and the racial uproar and all of the things that's going on. I have two boys, like two Black boys that I am raising, and just know how much how what I'm watching is affecting me and how I'm interacting with them. And they're 6 and 4, and they're looking at me when I'm pulling them away. If I see a police officer, just being nervous. And because at 6 and 4, they're learning about community helpers. They're learning about the police to help us. Meanwhile, I'm looking at the news and I'm like, I don't know. So just one when to step back.
I'll definitely say that during the pandemic, I was kind of one of those people that, like, literally, I watched NBC and I would watch the Today Show. I would finish with the Today Show, and then I would turn to CNN and I would watch CNN until 4 o'clock, or till 5 o'clock. And then at 5 o'clock, I would go back to NBC and watch the 5 o'clock news. And then I would watch until 7 o'clock when Jeopardy came on. And then I would be wanting to go back to CNN. And my husband would be like, "You've got to stop doing this." And then wonder why that night I couldn't sleep, because I've literally taken in all the numbers. I've taken in all the cases, all the deaths. I've taken in every single thing that they could say about everything that was going on around us all day long. And then at night I'm wired and I'm like, I can't sleep. Like, I need something to make me go to sleep, because my brain was just fried from taking in all the information. So we had to come up with an agreement that I just would not watch the news so much during that time, being home all the time. And I had to stop myself from, and like, I just started watching Friends, of course, then, and then it was like my brain went to being goofy. So it was kind of like between cleaning and finding everything in my house that I could possibly clean, and having every conversation that I could have possibly with my kids, who were probably tired of talking to me. At that point, I had to find other stuff to do, because I was probably driving them crazy, like on a whole nother level. But yeah, I think that during that time, a lot of people became, and I don't know the difference, if y'all could even talk a little bit about some of the differences versus just experiencing life, experiencing sadness versus what's actually depression. I think that we call things depressed that may not necessarily be depressed. It may just be general sadness or general life experiences and the ups and downs of life. And then I think sometimes there may be people who really are depressed, but they won't call it depression. They won't go get it checked out or diagnosed as, official depression. So tell us what some of the differences could be in trying to figure out, am I just sad? Am I just having a hard time? Or am I really depressed?
So we all deal with depression, anxiety, like on some small level. All of us, like, that's across the board. But when you're thinking about something that can be clinically diagnosed, it's how debilitating it is, right? So if I'm depressed and I'm sad, it's just a day. Like, we can just take, for example, watching all of the numbers on the news, and it just brings you down. Like, I don't have motivation to do anything, because like this is what's going on. That's kind of general, right? But if it's taken to the point where I don't have the motivation, I'm not getting out of the bed, I'm not washing my body, I'm not washing my face, my kids are not eating, that's when it becomes. So I always tell clients to look for the turning point is when it's debilitating, when I can't function, when I can't do what I need to do in a day. And not talking about like the little stuff, right? So if I go a day because I stayed up all night watching news, because I did the same exact thing you did. I would watch every single thing. Back in the beginning, they would do like it would be like the 6 o'clock, and it was like everything went off, and Trump was up there talking, and Dr. Fauci was right there. Like, I had to watch it. Then I had to watch the scene, like, the exact same thing. So that, and then not sleeping, and then waking up in the morning and not really wanting to do anything, I can identify what it was that caused that. Right. But if the next day I'm still not getting up, and I changed my habits, I'm not watching the news anymore, I'm not doing these things, but I still don't have the motivation to get up, that's when we need to kind of explore a little bit deeper. So debilitation is really what you want to look for. If I cannot function, and my house is not just unfolded clothes, because I don't fold clothes either, like, they just stay in the basket until we need them. And then I hate to iron, and it's crazy because I'm like, I hate ironing, but if I just go ahead and fold them out of the dryer, maybe I wouldn't have to, but I don't like it. It's just a task I don't like. Not just that, not just leaving the dishes one night, that kind of stuff is normal. But when it's to the point where you can't have visitors over, even though, we're in the pandemic, but you can't have visitors over because they got to walk over stuff because you just don't have the motivation to get up, to clean up, that's when we need to kind of like take it just a little bit further, just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Maya, would you agree? Like, what do you?
100%. That's the functioning level. That's exactly what I was going to say. So once you get to that point where it is really affecting your day to day, then absolutely. Like I would say, hey, 1 or 2 days, hey, I don't feel well. But when it becomes weeks, on time, not bathing, not brushing your teeth, everyone that you usually talk to, you're not answering your phone, it's on do not disturb, then it's like, hey, okay. And you used all your skills that you know, and tried to do some things. Like I did my deep breathing, I took a walk, and nothing's helping. I can't stop crying. I can't, definitely saying, hey, what's some things I can do? Yeah.
Okay, so what, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so what are some of the things, like, because our children, the children were home, not in school every day. They'll see in the news. What are some of the things that, or maybe some of the methods that parents could use to ease some of the stress with the homeschooling, or even watching some of the news?
Setting a schedule for sure, I would say.
Okay.
Setting that schedule, having some things in place, because I think when it happened, it was just like boom, everybody's at home now, and it's like, wait, what? Everybody's at home. Yeah, so figure it out. We got to do it. So it's like, okay, now I got to be a teacher, a mom. I'm still, if I'm a wife, so trying to figure those things out. So setting that schedule, that's something that I think is very, very important. Having that structure, even for yourself, saying, hey, let me take a moment. What am I going to do today for my self-care? Even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's 10 minutes, but what am I going to do? Because I think what happened was, I can definitely say for me, I went from, okay, going to work to now I'm home and I'm with my girls all day and we got to figure this work thing out. So they forgot they had teachers on the computer and I became their teacher. Mama, what's this? You got a whole teacher on that screen, but they would want to come to you instead, but you still have to cook. You still have to make sure, everything. So doing that self-care for yourself is definitely doing it. Still, as we continue to do it, I think a lot of people have picked up some good skills during this time because you didn't have a choice. You had to cope with it. Like it wasn't I go to work and I'm only home with the family a few hours. Now it's like, no. You get the enjoyment of being home a whole lot of, all day. And so definitely finding that, that one thing that you enjoy. And a lot of people say, hey, what's something that you enjoy? What's something you do that's relaxing? A lot of people say, hey, watch TV. And that's fine if that really is what it does. But what I try to tell people is make sure once you finish doing whatever activity you say that's relaxing to you, make sure your body really feels relaxed. Make sure it's not something that's just something you say you enjoy. Like I enjoy TV, but then I finish watching Friends and I'm like, I still feel like, I don't feel relaxed. What are you doing to charge your battery back up is kind of how I put it. If you continue to just put your phone on a charger for 5 minutes and then take it off and talk, it's going to die again. So making sure whatever you're doing, you are really doing it and it's charging you up completely so you can get ready for the next day that you have to have a schedule and a structure to maintain.
Now, what charged me and what relaxed me during the pandemic was not really a great thing because ice cream made me feel better. So we all know what that did, right?
Yes, absolutely. So then also now you have to set that goal to say, okay, I'm going to decrease my ice cream intake.
The pandemic, I'm not a drinker. And so, a lot of people turn to wine, which I get, like just trying to function. But I started baking cookies daily. Home baking cookies every day. And my kids have allergies. So I'm experimenting with all kinds of, I made some s'mores cookies with, dairy free. Galore. I had got it to the point where I was storing the batter in the freezer. I just pulled it out the next day because that was how I was able to cook. Like it was just like Maya said, like we were literally at work on a Friday, at home on a Monday. There was no preparation. Right. It was literally figure it out. And so one thing, in addition to having the schedule, I always told my clients, specifically during this pandemic, give yourself some grace. If you slip up and that schedule does not work out today, it is okay. Like, we are in this together. We don't know what the day is going to look like, especially in the beginning, because again, we were watching the news, we're waiting for them to tell us it's going to turn around. And then we had our previous president who was telling us, oh, by Easter, sir, this is like mid-March. Like, what are you like? What are you watching? Because what I see, we're nowhere near an Easter deadline, but like, we're watching that kind of stuff. And so, and again, like at the time, I had a 5 and a 2. No, he had just turned 3. He turned 3 March 10th, March 15th, he was sitting at the house with me. I'm like, you need to be at school. Like, I think now you had called me one day and I was like, he's screaming. I don't know, because he's used to music and movement in the morning, because that's what they do at daycare. And I'm like, I'm still trying to get my coffee in. What do you do? Like, I need your teacher. So just kind of understanding, like, sometimes it's not, the schedule may not work. Right. But I'm going to make every effort every day. I'm going to be intentional with it. I'm going to try to stay on this schedule. We're going to try to do it. But understanding that our kids were struggling too. Like, their norm was completely, out of whack. They were trying to do, like, my then kindergartner would be like, and I'm like, get up, sit at this desk that, I had to buy a desk. Like, all of us like going out buying things so they can be set up for school. And it's like, he's like, but this not my desk. Or my teacher don't do this. Well, listen. What you gonna do today? You gonna sit here at this desk, and you're gonna log in. We're gonna figure something out. But giving yourself grace, like allowing yourself that moment where it's like, you know what? I need to scream, or I need to walk outside. I need to let mommy be by herself, or I need to spend time with my husband, or I need to talk to somebody. Like, whatever it is you need to do, like, try to figure those things out. As much as you can, but give yourself grace, give your kids grace. Because I know, like, it's just been hard. It's just, and in all ages. I know sometimes we look at it from people who have younger kids, but even people who have older kids who, I had a lot of parents who I was getting referrals for their children because their teenagers were locked in the room. And so you think, oh, they're just being a teenager. They're literally depressed. When you're thinking about, they're not getting up, they're not motivated because they can't see their friends anymore, especially when the school year started and we were back in the same boat we ended in. It's just like, I'm starting high school or I'm starting middle school, and this is a new environment for me, and I can't be with my friends. And parents, all we could say was, I'm sorry, I want to keep us safe, and at some point, like with teenagers, it's like, but I'd rather be with my friend. Like, I'd rather be over here doing this. Be gentle with them. Be gentle with yourself. Allow yourself some grace. And continue, like, even now, where we are now, continue to give yourself grace.
And India, that's good about the children too, and paying attention to them. I think is huge too during this time, because even though we're frustrated, they're frustrated as well. They're expressing their, themselves in different ways. So making sure that we're looking to see, hey, has he or she been in that room 2 days straight? Hey, because they may need, they need that same loving and that same thing that we feel like, hey, I need that self-care. They need some too, and they just need that extra push from us. So making sure to check in, pay attention to them. We find ourselves yelling, being frustrated, checking ourselves and saying, hold on, because it wasn't just me that had to deal with this pandemic. Everybody had to. So yeah, definitely checking in on our children as well during this process, no matter the age.
I love that.
So do you think, now that everything is relaxing and, opening back up and whatever, do you think that there's going to be, I don't know, possible lasting effects of the last year and a half for a lot of people?
I think from a clinical perspective, I think there's going to be a little bit of like trauma responses, right? So when we're thinking about cold and flu season coming in August, right? So even though we're opening back up, we're getting a little more lax. People are, booking trips. Like my family, we're trying to take a trip. We had to book it through the week because the weekends are booked, because people like, I'm getting out, it's cabin fever, I am out of here. But then they're going to go back to school. And we all know when school start back, that's the perfect time for all the little, snotty nose, like all that stuff. And so I think it's going to create more trauma responses, because it's going to take us back to the last time, even though this could be the cold, a flu, sinuses, allergies, or anything like that. It's going to take us back to this particular incident in our time in our life where a person had a cough and it's runny nose and they didn't make it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just going to take us back there, which is why I think being in tune with yourself and knowing when you need to talk to somebody again. Therapy doesn't mean that I'm in this big crisis. I just got all this stuff on me in my day-to-day life. I'm struggling. They're going back to school. I'm going back to work. Like, my office is now back open and they're requiring us to be in the office. And, because our state has cut out the mandate for the mask, so my job isn't requiring that. So even though we're back, all those different things is going to create trauma responses for us. And then we start to have those anxiety attacks, those panic attacks, those depressed moments where, what's the point? Nothing's working out. We're just starting to have those things. So I think, at least for the next couple of years, I think we're going to have a lot of people will start to experience those kind of trauma responses, because this was such a big, it had such a big impact on us, on our lives, not just, what we saw. Like, we literally had to shut down. I think even for me, like, when people were saying shut down, like that Thursday, Friday leading up to us being shut down, I was like, that can't really make you stay at home. Like, they can't really make us stay. Like, come on. But they really made us stay. You got to have a letter. Like, my husband still worked and he had to have a letter in his car.
Yeah.
So that if he got stopped, and I'm just like, this is 2020. Like, I'm confused. Like, they really made us sit at home. So I think that's going to be a lot of things that cause us to have like those trauma responses, and those responses to where normally we would just give our kids a teaspoon of honey or a cough drop and send them on their way. Now we're just hovering over, or ourselves. Like, if we start to feel a little tinge in our throat, we're going to be, here we go, kind of thing. So being in tune with your body and understanding, like, okay, maybe I need to take a step back. Maybe I need to use my coping skills. Maybe I need to reach out to someone.
Yeah, and I would definitely say, to piggyback to the grief. So a lot of people didn't necessarily deal with the grief during this time because they had to keep moving. So I think that's going to be, something as well. Like, hey, once it kind of comes out, it's like, wait, I really did lose this person during this time, and I didn't even let myself go through the process because I had to keep going. So I think a lot of that too is going to be some after effects of it as well.
Listen, I know I was in the grocery store, I think like Thursday. I have allergies, so I've been taking, allergy medicine. I was on the aisle. I had on a mask. There was a lady, she had just walked in the aisle. I sneezed, and you would think like I flashed her. She turned around and took off. I mean, like fast. And I was like, I'm not even, like, she was just coming in the aisle. She looked at me. I mean, it was a look of fear. And like, her eyes got super big.
Me, Samantha, I'm the lady. I eyeball everybody. Like, you can cough, sneeze, or whatever, and I'm looking at you like, I gotta go. I can't even be near you. Like, and I go to work every day in a building with a bunch of kids. Like, and I'm like, I gotta go.
It is hard trying to just, my boys went back to school. My youngest, it's been maybe 4 weeks, I think, for him now. And the second week he came home with the snotty nose, and I knew it, like, in my brain, like, I know he's going back out there. He's getting, not just COVID, like just germs that he had been in the house away from. He came home that day. I picked him up and he had that snotty nose. He tried to hug me, like, just the quick reaction, because trauma response. I was like, oh, and I had to remember, like, this is my baby. Like, even if he is sick, he's my baby, but yeah. How long has he been coughing? Y'all don't want to keep him away. Like, and it turns out it just was allergies, because, and the way that it's set up now, even with this, like, he's back at school. He had the runny nose and the cough. They wouldn't let him come back that following Monday because they got to verify he doesn't have. So my 4-year-old had to get a COVID test. Now the doctor's like, I'm pretty sure it's just allergies. It was during the time, like, the weather keeps changing. Like, it gets really, really hot and then it's cold again. Right. And so I'm just like, but I'm glad he got it too, because he had to live here. And I'm like, you don't have to stay in your room, close the door. I know you're 4. You got, I don't know how to. But no, I didn't. I let him stay with me. But it was just a thought, though. Like, think about it. If you think about, like, all the stuff that you've been seeing, it just kind of it's a reaction that you don't even think about, right? It's like, again, somebody on the aisle coughing. You know what? I don't even need these groceries. We good. We good. We'll eat what's at home. Don't worry about it. I don't need it no more, because and we forget that there are allergies, especially when March, like the beginning of the year, like literally pollen's everywhere. So if I'm sneezing, I have a legit reason
Everywhere.
to
Right.
sneeze. But the trauma response is like, oh no, last time somebody sneezed, we were shut down.
Yep.
So
I literally fussed at my husband. He has like really bad sinus issues and allergies and stuff. And we went somewhere, and it was like, as soon as he, like, I guess he removed his mask either to eat or to do something, and then he like sneezed or coughed or something. And I was like, dude, you can't be doing that out in public. Like, you're not allowed to cough. I'm gonna hold it in or do something, but you got people looking at us funny. You can't do that. And he was like, seriously? And I'm like, I'm sorry, you can't cough. Like, I'm gonna need you to go outside to cough or something. Like, I need you to step 10 feet away. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But of course, he's looking at me like you're a crazy person. And I'm like, not really. Like, I'm just telling you what other people are thinking. I'm just saying it out.
Right. I had a story when somebody was telling me they were at a restaurant and they were sitting outside, but they end up like choking on, you know how you drink water and it kind of goes down the wrong way. And so they like, you know, had the whole coughing fit that comes from choking on water. They leave the restaurant and they like walking near the restaurant, and like when they walked back past, the restaurant had like put the yellow tape around the area and was like had blocked. I was like, on one hand, I'm appreciative of them taking, you know, caution. On the other hand, it's like, really, yellow tape? Like, is that what we need? It's the trauma response. It's us trying to figure out this new way of life because we don't know, right? We don't know. It's scary. So yeah, I definitely think it's gonna be a little while before we get back to quote unquote normal again.
Okay, so do you think there could ever be something, you know, kind of like too much therapy? That you've just had too much? Can therapy be excessive? Can you have too much therapy? Can you get dependent on it? Can those things happen to a person?
It depends, right? So if you're going to your therapist, like, and your therapist is giving you like day-to-day advice, Maya, go to work, do this, do that, and you need that every day, then yes, that's too much. Personally, as a therapist, I'll give you suggestions. I give suggestions. I talk about things that have worked in the past, but I'm never going to tell anybody what to do. Like, you're a whole individual, you can make these decisions. So in that respect, I don't think it can get excessive. Like, you just need somebody to vent to. Like, can you just listen to me? You know, unbiased, non-judgmental. You know, we have our friends that we talk to, but when your friends kind of know all your ins and outs, you can't really give them everything sometimes. So that therapist is there. But if you have a therapist that you become dependent upon, where I can't make a decision unless my therapist tells me it's okay. Just my thoughts. Maya, what's your take?
I was going to say, you know, I guess something we always talked about, of course, in the core world is once you admit it, you already think about discharge. So definitely having that goal set to say, hey, this, when you meet these things, then, hey, it may be, you know, it could be time for you to discharge. It could be time for you, you know, to step away from it. So it won't get to that point where you're so dependent. It's like, oh, okay, well, now let's do this. Or, oh, no, I still need you for this. It's like, hey, well, let's talk about it. Let's see where you are. Because the whole point, of course, is to give you those skills. So then, hey, yeah, you can be self-sufficient. You can go out there and do the things that you learn, you know, of course, in therapy and with the skill building sessions. So, yeah. And a lot of times it's a thing, I would say, you know, with India, like if we had a case though, India, sometimes we'd be like, all right, Maya, I think it's about time to discharge. So we would talk about it and see, okay, well, let's discharge the person from the services.
And the beauty of therapy is that I can come with this particular problem now, get my skills, learn how to cope with it, I'm able to deal with it. And then 2 years later, have a death in the family and I can't process through. It's like an open door kind of thing. Like, I can come back. So you don't have to stay connected. Like, even on my caseload now, my private practice, I got people that I see once a month because they just need a maintenance. I just need a reminder. I don't have to talk to you every week, India, or a couple times in a week, India. I'm fine. Sometimes I just need to, especially now that we're kind of getting out of this tightness that we were in with the pandemic, and we're kind of getting out there. But just like Maya said, like understanding that I don't need to do it all the time. And with therapy, like I can come back if a new trauma comes up or a new incident come up or new pandemic show up or whatever the case may be.
No.
I can go back. Right. I can always go back. I can always re-engage in services, and so that's the beauty of it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so India, do you have any just like basic everyday tips you would give to people? Just basic everyday stuff. Like if you're not at a point where you feel like you need therapy, but you might be like right on the borderline. Are there everyday tips that you could give people?
Definitely be in tune with your body, your mental health, like understanding like when I've crossed that line, allow yourself some grace. Be gentle with yourself. Like we're all dealing with stuff. If I can't be 100% today, if I'm only operating at 90, it's okay. It is totally okay. We're all operating at 90, 80 sometimes. So that's totally okay. And using whatever coping skills you have, like whatever coping skills you have that you're able to use. So if that's deep breathing, if that's taking a walk, getting back out there, it's warmer outside. I mean, I think tomorrow's supposed to be cold, but it's warmer. It's getting cold. I mean, it's getting warmer outside. So go out, get sunshine. Like that is going to be very helpful with, like, especially if you're on that verge, like go ahead and just get you some sunshine. Like you'll be surprised when you walk outside after a hard day inside and you walk outside, like your mood like increasing. So go outside. That's every day. Like go outside, get you some sunshine, even if it's just a couple minutes on your balcony or on your porch or in the front yard or whatever. Get active. That's the other. I think Maya mentioned that earlier. Get active. Like that's going to increase your mood too, to keep you from tilting over to the other side.
Okay. And Maya, same question.
Definitely. Outside is really good. It's a change of scenery. So instead of seeing everything that you see, and when you're outside, being intentional and living in the moment when you're out there, not just, okay, I'm going outside, paying attention to the nature, paying attention to those things. So really being intentional when you're out there to, using that as a relaxation, finding out things that are relaxing to you and do them. Once you find them, hey, sticking to them, doing them, trying to pull something for self-care. If it's saying, hey, I'm going to read 2 pages out of a book, hey, do that. Hey, I'm going to eat my favorite meal today. Hey, do that. So finding those things that you enjoy, and definitely doing those. Sleeping well. If you notice your sleeping pattern is off, doing something to change, try your best to get that good rest, because if you're not, if you're not well rested, you can function well, and it brings on frustration, and it can lead to other things. So definitely, doing that journaling, writing some things down. Some people don't like the journal, so you don't have to write a whole paragraph. It's yours. So just write down something, if it's a to-do list and you're like, hey, I just need to write it down. Hey, write those things down. So just doing those everyday things that may seem small, but at the end of the day, it will really, it'll once you release it, it's like, yes, okay, my to-do list. Hey, I checked these things off. I didn't. Be really careful with that self-judging. Try your best not to be so hard on yourself anytime, not even during a pandemic, but just in general. We're human. Some things we're going to get to, some things we aren't going to get to. It's okay. So just trying to do those things and managing those, doing that deep breathing, because yes, Samantha, like you said, even with all of us, I think sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm up to here today, but I don't think I need therapy. A lot of people get to that point. It's like, okay, so what do I need to do? So finding those things that can relax you, to charge your, battery back up, whatever those things are, really, and jotting them down. So if you forget, and I think that's another thing that we tend to do, is like, when somebody says, what's some things you enjoy, especially when you're feeling down? You can't think of anything because you're down, like you're not feeling well. So jotting those things down as the weeks go. And when you get in that moment, going to look at it and say, you know what, I do enjoy coloring. Let me go color something. So those are some things you can kind of look back at and do when you're not feeling the best.
Okay. And ladies, did you have anything else? Shanetta, Trina?
No, I think this was a good session.
Well,
Like we just had a whole therapy session here.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. I do have to apologize. I don't know what is going on with my sound, so it has been a little interesting tonight. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. We really enjoyed having you here, and you guys had an answer for everything, which was great. The answers, the tips, we so appreciate it. So I'm going to take you off. Just hold tight, though, and we'll be right with you guys. Okay. All right. To our regular Tuesday night viewers, it was a little rough, but thank you to all those who stuck with us. We truly appreciate you. As usual, we are here every Tuesday